Welcome back to the Lead from Your Heart Summit. Next up, we have Victoria Shaw, and she's going to be talking about leading with your heart means trusting your inner wisdom. Victoria is an intuitive counselor and spiritual guide who combines Ivy League training in psychology and counseling with generous intuitive guidance. Victoria is the host of Intuitive Connection podcast and the founder of Cactus Blossom Retreats in Escondido, California. Welcome, Victoria. So let's dive in.
Hi there. I'm Victoria Shaw, intuitive counselor and spiritual guide. And as you can tell, I'm super excited to be part of the Lead from the Heart Summit. I even dressed for the occasion. And I'm excited because living and leading from my heart is pretty much how it flows for me and has been both personally, professionally now for a couple of decades. And when I made that commitment to live that more heart-based way of being, it's just been a game changer in every aspect of my life. And I know that it can be for you too. And for me, the biggest piece of heart-based living, and the one that I'm going to talk about today, because it is the thing that I most love to talk about and most love to do, is inner wisdom and listening to my intuition. And I was thinking about this today as I was mulling over what I was going to talk about and what how I was going to connect your intuition to heart-based living, which it most certainly is. But I was thinking about when I work with clients, and that is what I do. I am an Ivy League trained psychologist, so there's that. But most of my work is around connecting people to their own inner wisdom. And I do that by tapping into my heart, tapping into my soul, tapping into my client souls, and then helping them to start to see and experience their lives from that perspective. And I do this every day, day in, day out, for myself and for my clients. And at the beginning of every session, I say this little prayer. And that's what I was thinking. And part of my little prayer, the very first thing that I do, and I've been doing this now for over a decade, maybe like the 15 years that I've been in practice, this prayer was given to me by my guidance almost right away. The first thing that I do is open my heart. The first thing I do is open my heart. I imagine opening my heart. I tap into my inner wisdom, into my guidance, because I know that all of the goodness comes from there. And energetically too, your heart, I've always been shown, energetically is that meeting place between your higher self. Because if you don't know this already, I will tell you, you are a spiritual being having a human experience. And right? So that soul part of you, that spiritual self, is actually who and what you really are. But you're having this human experience, and being here and being human is so beautiful and so important. So we want to give that its due as well, because we get to be here. And from your soul's perspective, that's a big yay. It's a celebration. It's a party, even when our human selves haven't caught up with that yet. But energetically, the heart is the meeting place between your soul self and your human self. So it's a really, really important spot. And I think heart-based living too means when we live more in alignment. We live more in alignment with our soul. We bring all of that human stuff that we are doing here, and we align it with that deeper spiritual purpose, right? And that deeper spiritual knowing and that bird's eye perspective that your soul always holds for you, even when your sweet little mind forgets. But most of us don't live from that intuitively guided place, right? And we don't live from that heart-based space. We live from our heads. We live from our heads, and we live for what we've been taught is good or bad, right or wrong. We've been taught that the world is full of a bunch of problems that we constantly have to solve. And we've been granted this mind that research will show us is often negatively based. It looks for the trouble. It looks for the trouble, right? When your heart, when your soul knows that all is well, even when you can't find it, and also is the fastest path back to your solutions. So for me, intuition, which comes from the heart, is a guiding force in my life. And though I am highly educated and highly left-brained, about 20 some years ago, I had my own little spiritual awakening. And I wasn't super happy in my life. I was emotionally overwhelmed and I was a new mom. And I so wanted to be, the best mom I could be to my kiddos. And I was struggling. I was struggling and they were struggling. And I wasn't the person that I wanted to be. I'd also taken some time off from my academic career to be a mom. And everyone kept saying to me, Victoria, you have all this education, and you have all this training and, you're supposed to be doing something. And I too knew deep inside that there was something on this earth that I was here to do. But I didn't know what it was. And I knew it wasn't the thing that I had been doing. So for me, everything magically and beautifully came together through that parenting of my children. And as they struggled and as I started to look to answers for them, but also for me, I learned about this thing called intuition. And I learned that we all have this spiritual GPS system, this inner knowing that has nothing to do with what we've been taught or how the world is supposed to work. It has everything to do with our innate connection to our higher self, to our soul. And it's something that we all have, though most of us have learned to go like that and pretend it's not there. And it's something that I had really loud and really strong throughout most of my life and was using all the time, and realized looking back that everything I was rewarded for, including, all the things that led me to my Ivy League doctorate, all came from my inner wisdom. They all came from my inner wisdom, but I just didn't know. And once I made that commitment to reconnect and really started to listen to that deep sense of knowing that has nothing to do with what my brain knows, right? But everything to do with what my heart knows. Everything about my life changed rapidly and for the better. And it just keeps going. It keeps going and growing. And for me now, my compass is always pointed, or most always pointed, in the direction of my heart, my soul, and my intuition. And it can be like that for you too. So I wanted to use the rest of the time that we have now to give listeners, those of you guys listening, some tips and strategies towards heart-based, intuitively guided living, because I think so many of us have been taught to follow the mind and sometimes to some extent follow the fear. And we all know we have this intuition. Some people discount it. Some people think it's dumb and, not very worthwhile. But I kind of know if you're drawn to this summit, you already know it's a thing and you already know it's important. And my guess is most of you are listening to it a lot of the time anyway. And again, we all have it. And we've all had those experiences, right? Where you know something and you don't know how you know it, but you know it. And when you tune in and listen, you find out it's always 100% correct. That's your intuition at work. And we all have it. I've yet to find someone that has not had an experience like that, where they just knew something and they don't know why they knew it, but it was right. That's your intuition at work. We all have it. But we're not taught to tune into it. And so a lot of us get confused. We get confused about what our intuition is. We get confused about, should we listen to our intuition or should we follow our minds? And we disconnect. So I want to give you a couple of steps today to help you reconnect with your intuition so that you too can have that guidance system aligned with your joy and your abundance and your magic and your purpose and your freedom and your inspiration and your ease, because those are all of the qualities that your soul is experiencing all the time and would love to help you experience more here in your human everyday life, right? And that is what intuitive and heart-based living gets to look like if you are up for that. So I really have 3 steps that help me to really tap into my intuition. Okay. And the first one is to learn to quiet your mind, right? Because the mind, unfortunately, when we're talking about our intuition, right? And your soul and your spirit, right? Your spirit, your soul self is always there. And your inner wisdom is always there, like the sun in the sky, right? But there are cloudy days. There are times when our emotions and our thoughts, they get really noisy. And that noise blocks our ability to clearly see the sun. And that's okay. We all have cloudy days. I have cloudy days. But what I've learned is that the more I learn to still my mind, the easier it is to receive my inner guidance. So the first step in learning to tap into your intuition and listen more and more is to learn to quiet the mind. That can be a practice of meditation. That can be going for walks in nature, walks by water. That can be breath work. That can sometimes be going to sleep and asking for guidance in your dreams. But whatever helps you still that mind will always help you hear your guidance more. So I'm inviting all of you guys to reflect right now on what are some of the moments when your mind goes quiet. What does that feel like for you? When does that happen? You might even want to journal a little bit about that after we get off this recording, right? Tune into what are some times when you hear your guidance and what are some practices that help you quiet your mind. That's the first step. The second thing that really helps me tune into my intuition is kind of understanding the flavor of what is intuitive guidance and what is not. Okay. And starting to know the difference, because most of us have been guided to follow this all the time, 24/7. And our minds are very loud. And sometimes they're also very sneaky. They're also in the habit of taking credit for all of our intuitive hunches and nudges. So many of us will make a choice that is truly intuitively guided, and we don't even know it because our mind jumps in and says, wasn't I smart? Well, it wasn't your mind at all. I've been told again and again by my own spirit guides, which I communicate with through my intuition in the course of the work that I do, for clients all over the world and have been doing now for well over a decade. What my guides have shared with me again and again is that intuition is happening all the time, and that everything really remarkable, every creative epiphany that you have, everything really good that you draw into your life, you've drawn into your life because you've been listening and following your intuition and your soul's nudges. And your mind might take credit for it, but your mind is just, the smoke and mirrors. It's not what's really doing the job, right? So as we learn to listen and know what our intuition feels and sounds like and listen to it more, we get the good stuff faster. We get the good stuff faster. And in those moments when life isn't feeling so good, we get the memo, the guidance from our higher selves, from our soul. We get back on track faster because that part of ourselves that isn't lost in all the human illusion and confusion and ouchiness and negativity, right? That part of us can always, guide us back home and reconnect us to that wisdom that is here. Got it? So a couple of ways that I know the difference between my intuition and my thinking mind and my fear and all the noise. Well, first of all, my intuition is always loving. It's always loving. So if that voice in your head is beating you up, it is not your intuition. Okay. Your soul loves the pants off of you, and that's where your intuition comes from. And so if anything is not loving and life affirming, it is not coming from your higher guidance. It is coming from your sweet little old conditioned mind. And you can let it be there, my friends, but I invite you to have some skepticism because you are beautiful and lovable and delightful. And any voice, internal or external, that tells you otherwise is definitely mistaken. So the first way I know is that the messages are always loving. A second way I know is sometimes they're not messages at all. There's a feel to my intuition, and I'm very kinesthetic. So my intuitive knowing just feels a different way. It feels calmer, it feels clearer, it feels more direct. And sometimes people will have really strong body sensations too. Like sometimes when something really hits home, it feels like I'm getting a little tear in my eye. Some people get the chills or the tingles, right? Or a feeling in their stomach. And sometimes too, when something's not aligned, we get those gut feelings that maybe don't feel so good. So starting to pay attention and listening and trusting those is also a really powerful and potent way to connect with your inner wisdom. Okay. And so intuition is always loving. It often speaks to us kinesthetically, right? Or as a calm, wise voice in our head. It's often surprising. My intuition often points me in directions that, when I hear it, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But I often have the sensation, yeah, but I couldn't have thought of that on my own, because your mind, my friends, can only regurgitate what you've been taught, right? And it'll just keep regurgitating it again and again. But anything truly creative and surprising and inspiring always comes from your intuition every single time. The voice of my soul or my intuition is always calm. It's always calm. It doesn't have a strong emotional charge. When something has a strong emotional charge, I know it's my mind. And then I sit with myself and I sit with it and I wait until I get back into a calm, present state. And then usually I can hear my intuition again. But when I feel very emotionally activated, then I usually know that is not my intuition. So if it feels fearful or anxious, or even really revved up excited, like I have to do this because I'm going to be like the best person in the world if I put, this one chip on this one number, don't do that. Usually, gotta breathe. That's not my intuition. So step 2 in connecting with your intuition is, like I said, starting to know what it feels like. And we do this from trial and error too, right? You'll start to know, you'll start to act on a hunch, and that hunch will pay off. Or maybe you're going to act on something that you think is a hunch. And as you take a few steps forward, you're like, yeah, you know what? I don't think that was it. But intuition always comes from that place as all as well. And so there's not really so much wrong steps, but just you're continuing always to collect more information and to rehone that beautiful compass, that beautiful tool that keeps you in alignment with your highest self. The last little step that I have for learning to deepen your connection with your intuition is to trust it. You got to trust it. You got to trust it. You don't always have to listen and follow, right? Sometimes we take those baby steps and that's okay, right? Because it is trial and error. But in order to really tap into our intuition, we need to trust ourselves as vessels and vehicles for receiving this information. And we also have to trust deeply in that process of life and our ability to learn and listen and align and release that fear of making mistakes or maybe being misunderstood or judged because we're not doing what other people want us to do or think we should do, right? Intuition involves that deep leap of trust in yourself and in that process of life. And again, that brings us back to our heart. Intuition is a very self-loving act, right? Because your soul loves the pants off of you. And when we align with our own self-loving nature, right, we allow more of our soul self to shine through. So intuition, I believe, is your greatest gift, not just of your heart center, but of your soul, of your life. It is the magic that has guided every great decision that I've ever made and continues to guide me. It guides my own personal development, my own spiritual development, and even, I even use my intuition to show me ways to deepen my intuition. True story, right? So it's the gift that keeps on giving. And I hope that this short video has inspired you to deepen your own connection and trust just a little bit more in your own inner wisdom. So if you want to learn more about me and what I do, you want to do a reading where I can help you connect with your inner wisdom through my lips, which is what I do, offering guidance, or you want to take a class to develop your own intuition, or listen to my podcast, which has been going on for 4 years, and we have literally hundreds of episodes all about awakening your intuition. If you want to do any of those fun things, go to my website, Victoria Shaw, S-H-A-W, victoriashawintuitive.com. It's all there. Check it out. I'm so grateful that I have this opportunity, sending a bunch of love to you all, and knowing and reminding you too of all of the beautiful wisdom and magic that resides within you. Love you all, and namaste.